Let's make a Scottish hat by reverse engineering it using Fusion 360. Okay, what we're going to be reverse engineering today is a hat that someone asked if I could make actually out of leather, which I convinced them would look a little ridiculous in my opinion. So I showed them some photos of the wool bonnet or Tam, T-A-M, hat that the guys in the TV show The Highlander tend to wear. And it's a pretty cool looking hat like you saw in that picture. They're very popular for people that go to like Renaissance festivals, stuff like that. And they're actually kind of hard to find, to be honest, unless you get on maybe Etsy or something, and they're really overpriced if you're asking me. Because it's a pretty simple thing to make once I reverse engineered what I found. So that is what you're actually seeing here, is me taking the photo of a hat that I was going to make for this person and simply taking some measurements and then bringing it in as a canvas into Fusion 360 so that I could get a fairly accurate group of dimensions that I need to make the hat. And I've seen one in person as well, and they're pretty simple as far as construction. It's essentially just two large circles in fabric, and again, not in leather. That would not probably work out, and that's about it. So you're going to see how I do this in this video. Now, one thing I will say is this particular build in Fusion 360 is going to be strictly for making sewing patterns, and there are some apps out there that you can use to make sewing patterns. You can use Adobe Illustrator as an example. I myself do not have Illustrator. I have Lightroom and Photoshop for photography, and it's a substantial amount more to get Illustrator. So I use a program actually that is called Affinity Designer. And it is fairly reasonable, and it does most of the same stuff that Illustrator does. So you can use that. But in this case, I'm using Fusion 360 just to do it because of my channel, and also you can set parameters. And if you want to make the hat larger or smaller, depending upon who wants it, you can simply change the parameters, and it will make your pattern obviously larger or smaller for whomever it's for. Now, as discussed earlier, this is the parameters that I set, and it's only took 3 in this case, and they are all you really need, to be honest. If you want to change this to a 15-inch top piece, it will change all of the circles together and make them stay constrained to the rest of the rings for your pattern. Now, you're going to see what the purpose of those rings are now, especially because the holes are coming through the pattern that I extruded. And again, you have to extrude in Fusion 360 to get drawings, so you can't just do this all in 2D, to my knowledge. I mean, you may be able to now. I haven't looked at it on the back end recently, but since I've been using this for a couple years, I was never able to do it, but there could have been an update that changed that, and I will look into that. However, this works the same. So you can simply extrude. I did just 0.05, I think it was, just to give me something to work with, because you do need these components, as far as I know right now, to get these over to drawings. And what these circles are going to be for is the feature pattern on path, not pattern on rectangle. And what this will do is allow me to make a ton of these holes in order to have the appearance of a stitch line on a sewing template, which you will see here in just a minute. Now, the two large holes are for rivets that I'll put in to have pull strings on this hat to make it an adjustable Scottish hat here. So that is why you're seeing these two large holes, and I'm actually going to incorporate some photos that will show you what I'm talking about from the actual finished, or not the finish, but the hat as I was starting to get it sewed up. You could see where these came into play as far as adding the rivets, which again, I had all the tools of the rivets because of my leatherworking, so this worked out kind of nice to add these in, because having tools already is much cheaper. I also had to use a different sewing machine than my leather sewing machine because of the material I was using and the fact that my sewing machine does not, for leather that is, does not do any kind of zigzag stitching or anything along those lines, which is fine because I don't really ever had the need for it when I'm doing leatherworking. The leatherworking sewing machine is much stronger and it can get through a lot thicker material than these types of home sewing machines, if you will. So again, here are all the holes on using the pattern on path feature. And again, this is strictly for something cosmetic whenever I go to create the drawings, which I will show on this particular video. You're going to see what appears to be kind of a cut line on the drawings to where you can put arrows and text to show people what these particular lines are for. Otherwise, you would just have a circle being put out on your drawing because that's all the component would have. So this is kind of my workaround I use to, which I've done on other videos for leatherworking, to be clear, but this also carries over into if I need to sew cloth as well. And I know that someone may want the pattern later. They would have a hard time understanding it if these were not on there. So once you have these, they appear to be simply two records is what it kind of looks like. You just separate these out and click on each one individually or together. I think I selected both at once, and then take these into the drawing side of Fusion 360 in lieu of the design side, which we're working in now, in order to make the prints or pattern for this particular build, should someone need this in the future. The colors don't matter, by the way. That is simply to have something to get a good photo for, to make it a little bit more noticeable on the YouTube channel. Okay, so once it's brought into the drawing part of Fusion 360, all you need to do here is choose, in this case, because of the axis that I drew on, you have the top view, and you'll notice that I'm on a very large piece of paper here. This is not an 8.5 by 11, but I will be printing it on 8.5 by 11, and that is because this is the best way to get a one-to-one picture, which is what you want on a pattern, into Fusion 360 for the drawing. So these will be separated using whatever PDF program you use. I use Adobe. I will, when I go to print these, I will print them as 8.5 by 11, and it will separate all these out to where these can be connected. Now you can go a little bit further and add a good amount of dimensions, which I do a little bit here. You can get as detailed as you want, but I did not plan on doing too much with this template. I may put this one on the website as a reference, but besides that, it's definitely not going to have everything I would probably do for a cloth working pattern. All right, just adding in, as I said earlier, the seam allowance, or letting people know what that's for. Things like that, as an example, are great to add for drawings such as this in Fusion 360. But anyway, thanks for watching. There'll be a lot more to come, some tool reviews, as well as some more Fusion 360 for leatherworking and anything else I need to make.